Theo and I have for you today, as we do every week, bold predictions. Yes, bold predictions. Bold predictions for week 12. We're already there. We're already at week 12. Is it week 12 or is it week 13?
It's week 12, Matt, and
It is week 12.
it's by Mageddon. You got Thanksgiving next week. You got the fantasy playoffs right around the corner. It's like the ramp up. Six teams on by.
I'm
Six
trying to
teams
speed
on
up
by.
the season. Let's get us out of here. But for now, we're in week 12, and we have bold predictions for you. Not just for this week, not just for week 12. This is a tough week. This is whoa. So we have some bold predictions, good and bad, not just good, mostly bad, some good, and also for the rest of the season, and also into 2025 for Dynasty. Theo, kick us off.
Yeah, so Matt, I'm actually really excited about my first prediction. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and we have the New York Giants coming off of their bye week. And you have these two players who have really shined. That were both day 3 picks, Tyrone Tracy and you have Bucky Irving. And I think both of these players are going to go on absolute tears to end the season. I think both these players are going to make impacts not only down the stretch, but in the fantasy football playoffs. And if you're a dynasty manager, these are both players that are giving you like mental gymnastics, because a lot of times this time of year, if you have a day 3 pick that pops, you're looking to get rid of them. I think these are the kind of players you actually should be acquiring. But let's start off with Tyrone Tracy. We saw the switch to Tommy DeVito, and I actually think that this is going to be a benefit to the New York Giants offense. I know there's mixed opinions on DeVito, and he was sort of a mixed bag player last year, but he had 8 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions last season. So I think that bodes well for the Giants holding on the ball a little bit more. And I think you're going to see a lot of efficiency with Tyrone Tracy. Tracy has a really, really strong schedule coming up. He gets the New Orleans Saints. He gets the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. This is going to be an opportunity for him to not only close out the season well, but Matt, I think he survives the offseason. And I think Tracy will be a 2-3 turn pick in 2025. He'll be a running back on the rise that people think has a year 2 ascension. We're very big fans of him at Player Profiler. We've been ahead of consensus with him in our dynasty rankings for quite some time. The other player who's a little bit under the radar is Bucky Irving, who's actually been very strong this season, but we've seen Rashad White also put up big fantasy numbers. And I think this is not a Rashad White is a downgrade. I think it's going to be Rashad White is going to survive and continue to score fantasy points through his pass catching ability. But I think you're finally going to see Bucky Irving be dominant as a runner. Bucky Irving is number 3 in juke rate. He's number 7 in evaded tackles, and he's 12th in breakaway run rate. So this is a player that really, when the Buccaneers are favorites, I think you're going to see him put up big fantasy scoring numbers. And the Buccaneers have the Panthers, Raiders, they've got the Cowboys, and then they have the Panthers once again. So 4 just incredible matchups. So for me, it's Tyrone Tracy and Bucky Irving, 2 sort of rookies that are being a little bit slept on in terms of their impact they can have for the rest of the season.
Well, especially with Tyrone Tracy, he has the great benefit of Devin Singletary motor signed a multi-year contract. So that is a meat shield right there. You have the free agent coming in who we know is going to be an established veteran that they can rely on when they're looking at their units, unit by unit, the running game, the passing game, the wide receiver room, deciding who they're going to draft. They're not going to worry in New York about the running game. So that's the beauty of it. It's like, oh, he's actually such a benefit that he takes a little bit of the load off, and these empty calorie touches that Devin Singletary will absorb to keep Tyrone Tracy healthy, and his presence on the roster keeps Tyrone Tracy posted up as the number 1 running back. He's the ultimate meat shield for dynasty purposes. This is part of the reason why Tyrone Tracy is such a strong buy right now.
100%. What do you have, Matt? What's your first bold prediction?
Well, I will get to that. I have a bold prediction, but I want to start with another rookie running back. There's another running back to talk about, a day 3 small school running back with great measurables, athleticism across the board on playerprofiler.com. Check it out. Burst score, agility score, speed, went to a small school, was an epic college receiver, was the best receiver, according to the coaches, at the Senior Bowl, including the receivers. But he's a running back. His name's Dylan Laube, and he's going to be thrust into an important role now with the Raiders. You have Alexander Mattison suffering an ankle injury. You have Zamir White suffering, a quad injury. So now we're starting to get to a point where we're going to have to see Dylan Laube. It makes sense that it would take him some time. Someone like a Tyrone Tracy, this is a Big Ten running back. He comes in, he can get acclimated to the NFL, pick up the playbook pretty quickly. Got a guy coming in from New Hampshire. It's going to take him some time, but now is about that time when Dylan Laube is fully acclimated, fully integrated, and he's just a much better player, much younger, much more juice than Amir Abdullah. So I can see Dylan Laube emerging, especially in the second half of this game in particular, emerging as the primary back in Las Vegas and putting up, say, 15 fantasy points. Watch it happen this week.
A bonus from the Podfather. A bonus bold prediction. I love it.
Yeah, bonus. Yeah, listen, I can riff off it. You want to talk about rookie running backs? I got a rookie running back. Hot take. Anything you want, right? You just tell me, right? I'm the ultimate menu. Okay, I'm the Cheesecake Factory. Anything you want. We got pages and pages and pages of takes and stats. You just lay it out, Theo, and I'll play it out. This week is an atrocity. When you look at the slate, you're seeing game after game after game with a sub 40 point total. One of those games is the stone worst game on the schedule. Can you guess which game it is?
That's a tough one, Matt. I'm sort of at a loss here. We got to play everybody. There's 6 teams on a bye.
I've got a game with a sub 40 point total with a lot of skill position players we want to play, that we have to play. One of these guys is a must play every week. You have to start it. You can't bench this guy. And yet, not a single player in this game is going to get there this week. Vikings at Bears. Not only does it go under, the final score is 10-7, and no one gets there, including Justin Jefferson. He has his most difficult matchup of the year against Jalen Johnson, and it's just an absolute puke fest in Chicago. Caleb Williams will take a step back. Oh, what about Shane Waldron? The witch was dead. No. Actually, Caleb Williams just ran into a completely smothering defense. The Vikings defense has quietly been a real problem for that offense. They've been able to win games 23-12, that kind of game, week in, week out. They haven't needed to break out the big-time aerial attack in Minnesota. And you have two teams where their defenses are better than their offenses. You have a rookie quarterback and you have a journeyman quarterback. This is the perfect recipe in the NFC North for just an absolute slugfest where no fantasy points are scored. Bench everybody from that game.
That's an ugly one, Matt. That's a depressing one for a lot of people to hear. And it's sort of like last week we had the offensive coordinator change. There is sort of renewed life with, hey, look at all the targets for the wide receivers. Sure. But this week you're ruining a lot of people's hopes, Matt, and ruining a lot of their spirits. So I'm going to build them back up with my next prediction. Every single fantasy playoffs, it seems like there's a running back that emerges and you're like, wow, this player was in a number of championship lineups. And I think that there's a sort of an under the radar player right now. And for me, it's Rhamondre Stevenson. This is a player that we've talked about together multiple times, sort of with his momentum he could have coming into 2025, because the Patriots re-signed him this past offseason. We love the fit with him next to Drake May, sort of the mobility of May, the accuracy of May with a pass catching back with some juice in Andre. But I don't think that there's not a lot enough being made for Mondre's potential in the fantasy playoffs. Matt, this past week, he had 24 touches. He had 21 touches the week before, and he's had multiple weeks with high-scoring outbursts. In week 8 and week 9, he had 23 and 22 points. This past week was only about 12.9. So right there at that like low-end RB2 number. But Matt, it starts to ease up a lot. Miami Indianapolis, Arizona, Buffalo. There's multiple matchups coming up that I think Rhamondre is going to thrive in, and he's going to get RB1 alpha bell cow usage. I'm talking about 20 touches a game type usage down the stretch. We love Drake May, and I think that Rhamondre is the one you really want to get. And if you're in a dynasty league, he may a lot of our dynasty leagues have trade deadlines this week, FFPC, a few others like that. Rhamondre makes for an excellent trade target because unlike some of these other veteran running backs, he's not going to cost you a straight up first. You can get Rhamondre with like a second plus. So go ahead, make the offer and use him down the stretch. And I think he's going to deliver for fantasy managers in the playoffs.
I still don't like him this week. I get it for the playoffs, absolutely. But they're going on the road to Miami. They're going to be playing from behind. They're 7-point dogs. I don't love this game for anyone on the Patriots. I think this is a stay away game for the Patriots. But after this week, you're right. Things really soften up, and you can see him really starting to go on a run.
Garbage time, Rhamondre dump-offs, Matt? Come on, give me that.
That's all you're going to get. That's all you're going to get.
I'll take it.
That's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. So, yeah, I think that by the end of the year, it's interesting. You compare him to like a DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift has the dynamism. DeAndre Swift was the elite pass catcher coming out of Georgia, and now you have two guys similar age on different tracks. One guy signed the contract with Chicago, but he's heading in the wrong direction. Rhamondre signing with was thought to be a much worse team. Now all of a sudden Drake May looks better than Caleb Williams. Suddenly Rhamondre Stevenson is in a much better situation, and I would rather have Rhamondre Stevenson than DeAndre Swift in Dynasty. And we talked about it. This week is going to be just an absolute horror show in Chicago, but it doesn't get any better, right? Chicago gets the Lions next week. They're going to be playing from behind. Then they go to San Francisco. So DeAndre Swift is the ultimate sell in Dynasty, just like Rhamondre is a buy. And I don't think that DeAndre Swift's ever going to recover from this stretch of weeks where he is going to absolutely crater out. And another game that's going to crater, Chiefs-Panthers, right? Because I can see a lot of people, they want to play their Chiefs this week, right? I got to get the Chiefs in there. Like they're playing Carolina. This is a great matchup. Oh, Chiefs have a great matchup. It's at Carolina. And the Chiefs defense is so good that Carolina can't score. And so the Kansas City's not going to need to score. So if you're relying on Kareem Hunt or Pacheco, you think one of them might get there, not going to happen. Maybe Xavier Worthy breaks for a long touchdown, probably not going to happen. What you're going to see is some catches from Travis Kelce, some catches from Adam Thielen, a 17-3 game, and again, nobody gets there. And one of the reasons why is that the average age of the leading pass catchers for both teams is 35 years old. Yet another stay away game.
Matt, you continue to depress everyone, and I'll agree with you. I think this is one that the Chiefs will dominate, but it won't be like a fantasy-friendly domination. And I also think that there's going to be a lot of disappointment with Isaiah Pacheco managers who are expecting him to come back to a full-on workload. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a split than people want to see. I think Andy Reid is going to slowly ramp up Pacheco so they can unleash him in the NFL playoffs, and they're not going to use the same sort of workload that he had early in the season, at least at first. So I think both of those guys can end up being like fringe RB2s this week and nothing you're super excited about playing. So Matt keeps bringing everyone down with his sad predictions. I'll bring you up with a happy one.
I mean, have you seen the slate?
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. So let's talk about the game that I know you're really excited about.
I'm a realist, man.
You're keeping it real. You're keeping it real, and you're keeping it bold right here on Bold Predictions. And I'll say, for me, last week was like, I live on Long Island, so I'm sitting there around a bunch of Jets fans, and you knew the Anthony Richardson rush attempt at the end of the game was coming, but the Jets couldn't stop it. And it was like Anthony Richardson, it was such an emotional game for him, such a big win for the Colts, such a roller coaster ride season for such a young quarterback. But Matt, last week we saw Anthony Richardson pass for 270 yards, 0 interceptions, with a 66% completion percentage. So that was his highest completion percentage. That was his highest passing yardage total, and it came in a win. This was also coincided with 2 rushing scores. He did that for only the second time in his career. I think Anthony Richardson is going to finish as a top 5 scorer at the quarterback position in back-to-back weeks. And I think the Colts are going to put a massive scare into the Detroit Lions. I think this game is going to be very, very fantasy friendly. And I think this is going to be Anthony Richardson shining at home. I'm not sure if the Colts are going to win the game. That's a tall task. But I do think that they're going to put a massive scare into the Lions. I will say Anthony Richardson has another rushing score. The rushing yardage goes way up. I think he gets about 65 rushing yards, a touchdown. And I will say he passes for 2 touchdowns this week, Matt. Anthony Richardson, top 5 quarterback, back-to-back weeks.
All right. We have bold predictions that are positive, right? I can go positive. Give us
positive.
The glass is half full with some of these games. That's the beauty of this slate, is that, yes, there's all these stay away games, including Chiefs-Panthers, including the Titans-Texans, Broncos-Raiders. So many stay away games on the slate. It's hard to count. But then there are a few Eagles-Rams, Ravens-Chargers we'll talk about. And this is the game I circled. This is the game. Colts, 7.5-point dogs at home. Vegas screaming out, somebody take the Colts. And this is one of the bets of the year. The Colts against the spread and the Colts money line. I like them both. Colts against the spread, though. They just have to lose by 7. They still cover. It's a beautiful thing when you see that 7.5-point spread. There's just a little bit too much enthusiasm around the Lions right now. It's understandable. They've come off some huge blowouts of teams that were just bottoming out at the time with Mac Jones. This is a different story. They tried to break him, Theo. They tried to break him. Jim Irsay tried to break him, and they couldn't break him. They said, you know what we're going to do to this guy? We're going to put him up against Sauce Gardner. We're going to bench him, then we're going to play him on the road at MetLife Stadium, right? And what he said to his capricious owner is, F you. F you, I got this. That's what Anthony Richardson said. And then what happened? He was efficient. Now he gets a home game against a softer secondary. What do you think he's going to do? I can tell you what he's going to do. He's going to light him up. He's going to light him up. Goff's going to light him up. He's going to light him up. Goff's going to light him up. It's going to be an absolute fireworks display in the sky. We're talking about 70-point total. We're talking 36-34 type game, 38-34, 38-35, 40-38. That's the kind of game we're going to get this week. Giddy up. Game stack the hell out of this thing. I could see you stacking Richardson with even an Alec Pierce. You know Alec Pierce, he's getting 4 or 5 targets a game, but they're deep targets. The depth of target for Alec Pierce is exceptional. He's one of the most athletic wide receivers in the league that nobody knows about. So write down a long touchdown for Alec Pierce, and so that's a value stack in DFS. Run it back with Amon Ra. You can double run back. You could do the double run back, Amon Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, because we know the Colts get exposed by outside wide receivers. So this is the perfect week in dome conditions to play Jameson Williams. And Amon Ra St. Brown about to go off yet again. And how many games does Amon Ra have to go off where Justin Jefferson again gets erased before we start talking about the difficult discussion, the difficult topic, right? The inconvenient truth that Amon Ra is about to overtake Justin Jefferson in Dynasty. By the end of this year, there will be a new wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. Certainly the number 1 is Jamar Chase. The number 2 by the end of the year, based on how things are trending, it's going to be Amon Ra posted up in that wide receiver 2 chair in Dynasty. Watch it happen.
I love it. I mean, I think that it's bold and it's actually something that could come true. Completely agree with you. If you're a DFS player, you sort of have to attack this Indianapolis game. This is the game where there's going to be all the points this weekend and a ton of guys we want to cram in our lineup. And also, if you're chasing it, Matt, and you're looking for like a flex, I want to flex guys like Alec Pierce this week. I don't want to mess around. It's limited options, so we want to swing for the fences. Let other people start their floor play. Swing for the ceilings with Alec Pierce. And for me,
yeah. Why? Yeah, you can go ahead. Let your opponent start Kareem Hunt in flex, right? Try to bank those 8.5 fantasy points, and you can play Alec Pierce and get 18.5 fantasy points. That's
right.
the move.
That's the move, 100%. And I'll stay on this positivity with 2 wide receivers that are sort of on the rise. And these are not like, it's not like I'm searching from the bottom of the barrels. I'm going with 2 big alpha wide receivers sort of on opposite ends of their career. Brian Thomas Jr., Matt, this is one where we were nervous about BTJ because BTJ was banged up, and BTJ was sort of seemed like he was hitting a rookie wall. But last week, there was a lot of positivity with what we saw from him. And we also, like, in terms of like some of the underlying metrics, they were completely there for BTJ. He had 80% route participation. He had a 24% target share, put up solid numbers. He had 7 targets again last week, had 80 receiving yards. They even gave him a rushing attempt. And I don't think they do that if he's banged up and they're looking to sort of limit him. BTJ finishes as a wide receiver 1 on the season. He gets back the momentum that he had earlier in the year. So you had a 6-point week, a 3-point week. Now he's back on track, 13.5 points. He has week 12 to get right, get healthy through the bye week. And then when he comes back, a number of AFC South opponents. Then he's got the Vegas Raiders in week 16. Everything's sort of shaping up for Brian Thomas to regain that momentum heading into 2025. And the other player, I'm going to talk about an older wide receiver. We get back Mike Evans this week. And Mike Evans returns to a situation that is even better for him than when he left it. My enthusiasm for guys like Bucky Irving, guys like Rashad White, guys like Baker Mayfield, I'm on these Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they end the season well. I think Liam Cohen is a great offensive coordinator. Now he's going to be able to have things back to normal, where they had all those weeks where they were skating by and playing competitive football, with getting so many touches for their running backs, getting so many targets for Cade Otton. Now they get back a proper alpha wide receiver. And last season, Matt, we had Mike Evans with a 23.5% target share. He had a over 40% air yard share, finished the season as wide receiver 10 overall, 16.6 points per game. This season, he's wide receiver 23 in points per game, but Chris Godwin's out. So I think that the numbers are going to shift back towards what we saw last season. I think Mike Evans is a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. And Matt, he's also chasing greatness. There's a lot of extra motivation for Mike Evans to finish the season well. He's 665 yards away from another 1,000-yard season. And if he does that, that would give him 11 consecutive, which would put him right behind Jerry Rice. Right now, he's tied with Randy Moss for all-time 1,000-yard seasons, and one more 1,000-yard season, and he's right behind Jerry Rice. Now, that's too tough of a hill to climb. Jerry Rice is at like 14 of them.
No one's catching Jerry Rice.
No. Like Mike Evans, though, for playing that, like that is one of the things we want to circle and pay attention to. I know at Player Profiler, I know a lot of us were looking at the young players. We want like the Brock Bowers records, and that's great. But we have to keep an eye on some of these veterans. And Mike Evans, the sort of consistency he's had as a player, this is a Hall of Famer. This is a player who's done it for one franchise in a time where all these guys bounce around. You have to root for Mike Evans to get that 1,000-yard season.
Okay, so we're supposed to have 5 bold predictions apiece, right? And you're shoehorning multiple takes into one. You're combined. This is a bit of a cheat. Now, I admittedly, I've been doing the same thing. I'll follow up what you're doing with a take that doesn't count just because it's building on what you did. And then now you're being like, oh, this is a 2-part question, or this is a 2-part take. I get it. Like, I respect the hustle. I also want to remind the audience that a player that's on waivers right now in even deep leagues is also coming back for this passing game, and that is Jalen McMillan. So the whole passing game is going to be different now. Thank God. No more Sterling Shepard. It's going to be Jalen McMillan slotting into that Chris Godwin role. So in deep leagues, he's an interesting streamer. I don't love it this week. There's just not a lot of points up for grabs in that game. That game looks like it could be more of a Bucky Irving game, as you talked about earlier. That makes more sense to me looking at game flow. But for the rest of the season, Jalen McMillan is interesting because a lot of us are in a truly desperate situation trying to find wide receiver help. And you also mentioned Brian Thomas. I have a wide receiver that is going to outscore Brian Thomas the rest of the year. This wide receiver is a true league winner. So pop quiz hot shot. Who is number one in wide receivers among all wide receivers in the NFL? Who is the number one in total explosive plays?
This is one where I think I got to guess. Is it WarDaddy Jayden Reed?
Okay, so we did.
That was off the cuff. No,
I regret sharing. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm keeping my bold prediction secret from now on, so we can do proper pop quizzes. Yes, on Player Profiler, the EPX metric. Check it out on the Player Profiler player pages, and you can see Jayden WarDaddy Reed, baby, number one in explosive plays. This offense is going to consolidate around the top playmakers. That's my bold prediction. And this week in particular, you're going to see an explosive performance at home against the 49ers. This is perfect. The 49ers secondary has been decimated. They go on the road. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. This is one of those games you're going to want to stack up. But the top performer for fantasy this week in this game is going to be Jayden Reed. He is going to go for 7 catches because he doesn't have a huge target share, but he delivers the explosive plays. So he'll go like 7 for 8, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he will help people win fantasy leagues. This is a league-winning wide receiver, and by the end of the year, he will be a top 15 dynasty receiver. But because Player Profiler and our dynasty rankings in particular give you tomorrow's newspaper, we already have him as a top 20 dynasty receiver, but he's going to creep up into the top 15. Watch it happen, baby.
Love WarDaddy. One of the most explosive players in football, one of the most fun players in football. It's happening, Matt, where he's going to rip off a 50-yard touchdown. I remember last year it was WarDaddy on Thanksgiving. This is going to be a little bit pre-Thanksgiving WarDaddy, so I love it. For me, this is going to be a little bit of I love giving these bold predictions where we talk about NFL draft, things down the line. For me, I'm actually going to take a look at the coaches, and I think that the Lions are on a collision course with winning the Super Bowl. They are my Super Bowl pick this year. I know last year, the two of us were in Michigan for the NFL draft for our wonderful NFL draft coverage at Player Profiler, and we sort of talked about the Lions like next year sort of taking that next step. They had the difficult loss in the NFC Championship, and this year they've really just been running away with it. But it's sort of shades of a Bill Belichick Patriots team where they won the Super Bowl and then lost Charlie Weiss and lost Romeo Crennel to head coaching jobs. One was Notre Dame, one was the Cleveland Browns. This time it's going to be 2 NFL head coaching jobs. We saw this a couple years ago in Philly where it's double OC, DC, get head coaching jobs. You're going to see Ben Johnson really get his pick of jobs. And I think there's a lot of indecision over which one he wants. There's some rumors about Jacksonville, rumors about Cincinnati. I do think ultimately it'll be the Chicago Bears.
I was going to say the Bears, man.
It's going to be the Bears, but there's a lot of the guys, get your checkbook out if you want Ben Johnson, if you're one of these teams. That's also going to matter.
Bears.
And Aaron Glenn has been terrific as the defensive coordinator. And they lose Hutchinson to a season-ending injury, and the defense has still been terrific, putting pressure on the quarterback and putting Detroit in a situation where they're so completely dominant in terms of margin of victory. That's a defensive stat as much as it is an offensive stat. Aaron Glenn will be hired by the New Orleans Saints this offseason as their new head coach. So you're going to see both of those guys. And a bonus, Jesse Minter, 1 year under Harbaugh in LA. Jesse Minter will be hired by somebody. I think he will be the red hot name where we all want offensive geniuses to be hired as head coaches. We're fantasy football people, but I think real NFL GMs are going to look at what Jesse Minter's done in his first year in LA, and they're going to say, that's the guy. I want to hire Jesse Minter. Not sure which team he's getting hired by, but he will be a head coach next season.
Thank God I get to go last, because you tried to take us out with coaching takes, and that's just not going to happen. Not on my watch. We're not going out with coaching takes, I can tell you that. Now, we'll stick with Harbaugh too, because that's the one thing that you know. It's Harbaugh against Harbaugh. And I want exposure to that game. That's going to be a shootout. Harbaugh versus Harbaugh, Monday Night Football. And what does Jim Harbaugh want to do? Stop the run. And he is going to do that. Derrick Henry will be absolutely useless this week. Under 5 fantasy points for Derrick Henry. But what does that mean? That means Lamar Jackson's going to have to throw. This is going to be Lamar Jackson's biggest passing game of the year. It's going to be a total shootout with Lamar and Justin Herbert both getting there. Fringe options like Quentin Johnston scoring touchdowns, which is all that Quentin Johnston knows how to do. But the guy you're going to want to start, we talked about earlier, hey, you could play an Alec Pierce, a guy I like even more than Alec Pierce in terms of a fringier option at wide receiver that could get you 20 fantasy points. We have 2 receivers in the player profiler database that come to mind right now that are comparable to Stephon Diggs. We talked about one already, Jayden Reed. The other is Rashad Bateman. This is screaming out as a Rashad Bateman week, also as a Flowers week, but both of them get there. Rashad Bateman goes for 100 yards and a touchdown and saves your fantasy matchups this week. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.